Hey everyone, welcome back to the Incredible India podcast series. I am your host, Sam.
And I'm Taylor. So glad to be here.
Welcome to you, the listener, to today's deep dive. I want you to try and imagine a secret society that makes the Illuminati look like like a casual neighborhood book club.
Right. Like totally amateur hour.
Exactly. We are talking about an organization founded over 2,000 years ago, operating completely in the shadows and guarding this collection of 9 specific books.
But, to be clear, these aren't books of ancient philosophy or poetry.
No, definitely not. According to the sources we're unpacking today, these texts contain science so advanced and honestly so utterly lethal that just reading them could literally trigger the apocalypse.
I mean, it feels like the plot of a crazy sci-fi thriller, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually anchored right in the historical reality of 270 BCE. This was during the reign of the Indian Emperor Ashoka.
Yeah, and the whole premise we're exploring today is whether Ashoka intentionally created history's most secretive, black ops group, the 9 Unknown Men.
The ultimate shadow organization.
Right, and he supposedly did this to protect humanity from its own technological brilliance.
Which is just a wild concept for the ancient world.
It really is. So over the course of this deep dive, we're going to trace this entire mystery. We'll start with the unfathomable bloodshed that turned a ruthless conqueror into a philosopher king.
The catalyst for everything.
Exactly. Then we'll detail the terrifying contents of those 9 books of forbidden knowledge. We're also going to dig through the actual dirt, the archaeological and textual evidence that suggests this society was actually real.
The physical proof.
Yeah, the physical proof. And finally, we'll ask the biggest question of all. Are the 9 unknown men still operating behind the scenes today? Are they dropping technological breadcrumbs into our modern world?
It's a huge question. But, to understand why a secret society like this would even be necessary, we have to look at the crucible that forged it.
Right, the origin story.
Yeah. The story of the 9 unknown men doesn't begin in a quiet library. It begins with just unimaginable violence. Because Emperor Ashoka wasn't always a beacon of enlightenment.
Far from it.
Right. In his early years, he was an aggressively expansionist, incredibly ruthless conqueror. His Mauryan Empire was this massive machine of war.
I mean, it stretched from present-day Afghanistan all the way across to Bangladesh. It was massive.
It was. But then comes the year 261 BCE and the Kalinga War.
Yeah, the turning point.
The human cost of that specific conflict is, it's staggering. You really have to pause and absorb the scale here. We're talking about ancient warfare, where combat is hand-to-hand, sword to shield.
Very personal, very brutal.
Exactly. And in that context, we are looking at over 100,000 people dead on the battlefield.
Wow.
And it gets worse. A further 150,000 people were displaced. They were essentially turned into ancient refugees, with their homes and livelihoods just burned to the ground.
And Ashoka didn't just, order this slaughter from a comfortable, distant palace. He actually rode out and witnessed the devastation firsthand.
He was right there in the aftermath.
Yeah, he stood on that battlefield looking at the catastrophic consequences of his own ambition. The legends say the rivers literally ran red with blood, and something inside him just fundamentally broke.
Or, maybe something finally woke up.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
A profound psychological trauma.
And he documented it, which is the crazy part.
Yeah.
He documented this trauma in what we now call Rock Edict the
It was carved right into the stone.
Literally. It's one of the most remarkable surviving documents from the ancient world. It's essentially a supreme ruler carving his deepest, most agonizing regrets into the side of a mountain for eternity.
It's basically a public confession.
Exactly. And following Kalinga, Ashoka completely abandoned military expansion. I mean, he embraced the nonviolent teachings of Buddhism, and he pivoted his entire empire towards social welfare.
He started building hospitals, right?
Yeah, hospitals, roads, and he started ruling through moral authority instead of force.
Okay, let's unpack this because it is really hard for a modern mind to grasp. I want you to imagine a major, aggressive, modern superpower today, right?
Okay, picture that.
Imagine them fighting a single devastating battle, and the leadership is so deeply traumatized by the horrors they witness on the ground that they completely dismantle their entire military-industrial complex overnight.
Shut it all down.
Yeah. They melt down the tanks, they unilaterally disarm all their nuclear weapons, and they pivot the entire national budget to global humanitarian aid. That is the sheer scale of the ideological whiplash we were talking about with Ashoka.
That analogy captures the magnitude perfectly. It wasn't just a policy change. It was a total systemic paradigm
That's
shift.
completely unprecedented.
And you can still trace his transformation in stone across India today, reading the moral guidelines he left behind on these towering pillars.
Yeah.
But, and here's the crux of the issue. This sudden pivot creates a massive historical friction point.
Which brings us to the ultimate contradiction of this whole story. If Ashoka became this enlightened, pacifist ruler of absolute nonviolence, why on earth did he feel the need to create a clandestine, heavily guarded shadow organization?
Right, why build a black ops group if you're a pacifist?
Exactly.
Well, the answer lies in the sheer volume of high-level information flowing through the Mauryan Empire at that specific moment in history.
It was a golden age of knowledge, wasn't it?
It really was. This was an era of unprecedented intellectual exchange between Greek, Persian, and Indian civilizations. Ashoka's royal libraries weren't just dusty archives holding poetry and philosophy.
They weren't just reading rooms.
No, they were essentially the ancient equivalent of MIT or DARPA. They were repositories of cutting-edge empirical science. We're talking advanced metallurgy, complex medical procedures, astronomy, and crucially, highly destructive military technology.
And some of the claims in our sources about what was actually in those texts are just wild. I mean, we have ancient Sanskrit works from this era hinting at flying machines.
Yeah.
Right. And incredibly powerful explosives. And what some modern scholars even interpret as an atomic level understanding of matter.
It's mind-boggling stuff.
It is. And Ashoka had just witnessed at Kalinga what happens when military technology outpaces human moral restraint. It leads to absolute slaughter.
Unchecked power.
Right. He realized that advanced knowledge in the wrong hands is the ultimate weapon of mass destruction.
And what's fascinating here is how Ashoka's solution to this problem perfectly mirrored his newly adopted Buddhist principles, specifically the concept of the middle way.
Okay, so
Well, a deeply reactionary, traumatized ruler might have just burned the royal libraries to the ground, right?
yeah, just destroy all the dangerous tech, burn the books.
Exactly. They would have destroyed the knowledge entirely to ensure it could never be weaponized again. But wholesale destruction of science is an extremist reaction.
It's an overcorrection.
Yes. Ashoka recognized that the knowledge itself wasn't inherently evil. It was just that humanity wasn't mature enough to wield it responsibly. So he chose a sophisticated bureaucratic solution: compartmentalization and safe preservation.
So to execute this middle way, he couldn't exactly just slap a top secret sticker on a scroll and leave it in the public archives.
No, definitely not.
He needed a radically different system of knowledge management. He needed living guardians, 9 of them to be exact. He systematically divided the most dangerous scientific disciplines into 9 distinct areas, assigning 1 guardian to each.
It's arguably the first organized non-proliferation effort in human history.
Oh, yeah, when you put it like that.
By ensuring no single individual could ever possess all the destructive knowledge at once, he created a decentralized firewall against human corruption.
That is brilliant. Let's actually dive into the contents of these 9 books, because the domains of knowledge they supposedly cover are genuinely terrifying when you think about them being in the hands of an ancient empire.
Oh, absolutely.
Book 1 was entirely dedicated to psychological manipulation and mass propaganda.
Psychological warfare in the ancient world.
Yeah. It wasn't just about giving good speeches. It was the empirical science of controlling entire populations, molding public thought, and subverting rival kingdoms from the inside out without ever drawing a single sword.
Which is terrifying. And then Book 2 shifted from the mind to the body, focusing on human physiology.
Like ancient medicine.
Well, no, this wasn't for healing or surgery. It detailed lethal physiology. Think of it as the ultimate dark manual of martial arts.
Oh, wow.
It detailed specific nerve clusters and pressure points, similar to the ancient Indian concept of marma points, that could disable or instantly kill a person without leaving a single visible mark or bruise on the body.
The perfect assassination tool.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then Book 3 covered microbiology and biological warfare. It supposedly contained a detailed understanding of how diseases spread and how pathogens could be weaponized to wipe out entire cities.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. But wait, hang on. I need to stop you right there. Microbiology.
Yep, microbiology.
We're talking about an ancient civilization literally thousands of years before the invention of the microscope. How could they possibly be weaponizing bacteria when germ theory didn't even formally exist yet? I mean, are we sure modern readers aren't just projecting their own technological anxieties onto ancient spiritual texts?
That is a completely fair pushback and a vital distinction we have to make when looking at these sources. Ancient Indian literary traditions heavily utilize metaphor.
Right, there's a lot of symbolism.
True. However, you don't actually need an electron microscope to empirically observe the vectors of disease. Ancient scholars were incredibly acute observers of cause and effect.
I guess that's true. They saw patterns.
Exactly. Even without knowing what a bacterium looked like, ancient texts outline strict rules for water purification and quarantine during plagues. If you understand how a sickness spreads through a water supply or a rat population, you have enough empirical data to weaponize it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You don't need to see the germ to know how to launch the plague.
Right.
And that brings us to Book 4, which dealt with alchemy and material science. This was essentially the ancient mastery of complex chemistry, the ability to manipulate matter and synthesize entirely new compounds.
Which bleeds right into Book 5, focusing on communication technologies.
Right.
And we're not just talking about shouting across a valley or using split signals.
Right.
This was literally the principles of transmitting information across vast distances instantly.
Like ancient radio or something.
Hmm.
And then Book 6 was focused on ultra-strong metallurgy, detailing the secrets to creating alloys stronger and lighter than any known metal at the time.
And we know ancient India had some serious metallurgical chops. You just have to look at the Iron Pillar of Delhi.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
It has been standing exposed to the elements for over a millennium and literally refuses to rust. It's a metallurgical marvel that modern science still struggles to fully replicate.
That's just crazy. Then we have Book 7, dealing with time, cosmic cycles, and precise astronomical prediction on a scale of millions of years.
And Book 8 supposedly covered light, its properties, its speed, and how to harness it as a tool or even a weapon.
And finally, Book 9 held the ultimate, most closely guarded secret of the society. Principles describing the manipulation and control of gravity itself.
The anti-gravity book.
The anti-gravity book, that's the one that always pushes the boundary from history into what sounds like ancient aliens or pure science fiction.
So it sounds like sci-fi.
I mean, the burden of carrying that kind of knowledge, knowing you have the blueprint to either uplift humanity or literally crush it into dust, is just unimaginable.
Which is exactly why the selection criteria for these 9 individuals was incredibly rigorous. You couldn't just pick the smartest scientists in the room.
Right, you need more than just brain power.
You needed candidates with exceptional intellectual capacity, but more importantly, absolute loyalty to the concept of preservation and unwavering moral character.
Uncorruptible people.
Yes. These guardians were pulled from Ashoka's innermost, circle-trusted generals and scholars who had proven, under extreme pressure, that they could resist the temptation of ultimate power.
And they were bound by an ironclad sacred oath. They swore in absolute secrecy to never reveal the knowledge outside the society, to never use it for personal or political gain, and to never let it fall into dangerous hands.
Even if it meant being tortured or executed.
Exactly. But the most critical piece of this entire puzzle was the succession protocol. Each guardian was required to find, vet, and relentlessly train a single replacement before they died.
That succession protocol is the engine of the entire legend. It was designed to create an unbroken, continuous chain of knowledge protection spanning centuries.
Far outlasting Ashoka, the Mauryan Empire, and any single human lifespan.
Truly a multi-generational mission.
So a secret society guarding biological warfare and anti-gravity sounds fantastic in a thriller novel. But if this really started in 270 BCE, there has to be a physical paper trail, right?
You'd think so.
Like, what happens when modern archaeologists and historians actually dig into Ashoka's ruins? Is there any hard evidence, or is this entirely a myth?
Well, if we look at the historical breadcrumbs, there's a fascinating, albeit fragmented, trail. The earliest textual references don't explicitly say the 9 unknown men, but they describe the exact same covert mechanism.
Okay, like what?
Take the Arthashastra. It's basically ancient India's ultimate playbook for running a kingdom, attributed to the brilliant scholar Chanakya. It extensively outlines how an empire must build massive, highly compartmentalized, covert spy networks just to protect dangerous state secrets.
We also find cryptic references in Tibetan and Myanmar Buddhist manuscripts that explicitly mention 9 elite guardians of wisdom serving Emperor Ashoka.
Which matches the number perfectly.
Right. And there are also fragmentary Sanskrit texts found in deep temple libraries in Kerala, carbon dated to the 3rd century BCE, which speak of scientific knowledge deemed too powerful for ordinary minds to access.
But the physical archaeological evidence is where things get truly compelling. Excavations at Ashoka's ancient capital, Pataliputra, revealed a bizarre, heavily fortified underground chambers.
Chambers. Like dungeons.
More like labs, actually. These spaces don't match typical palace or religious architecture at all. They feature heavily reinforced walls and highly sophisticated ventilation systems.
The kind you would need if you were conducting dangerous chemical experiments.
Precisely. Archaeologists even found stone tablets inside bearing advanced, unrecognized mathematical and chemical symbols.
And then there are the famous Ashoka pillars scattered across India. For centuries, everyone thought they were just solid stone monuments carved with moral edicts.
Right, just big billboards for his philosophy.
Yeah, but relatively recently, archaeologists discovered hidden compartments within several of these pillars. They were sealed with a unique, incredibly resilient cement mixture that modern chemistry hasn't been able to identify.
That alone is fascinating.
I know. And inside these compartments, they found metal scrolls written in a bewildering cipher.
That cipher is a perfect example of ancient compartmentalization. I mean, imagine taking the alphabets of English, Mandarin, and Russian, scrambling their syntaxes together, and locking that code inside a concrete pillar.
That's the level of ancient encryption we're talking about.
Yes. The scrolls combine Greek, Aramaic, and Brahmi scripts into a single unreadable language. The tiny portions that cryptographers have managed to decipher make direct references to guardians of protected learning.
We also have the excavations at the Sanchi Stupa, one of the most important Buddhist monuments in India. Deep beneath the religious site, they excavated a hidden chamber containing precision-crafted metal instruments, thick distillation tubes, chemical crucibles, and detailed anatomical drawings.
A literal laboratory.
Yeah. What is a highly advanced chemistry lab doing buried under a monastery? It strongly implies a parallel, highly scientific shadow organization was operating right alongside the public religious one.
And what's wild is that this wasn't just a local Indian rumor. You had foreign observers confirming it.
Really? Like who?
Well, Megasthenes, a Greek ambassador to the Mauryan court, wrote extensively in his journals about 9 specific scholars who were given immense privilege, but never wrote down a single word of their discussions.
The oral tradition, keeping it off the books.
Exactly. Hundreds of years later, Xuanzang, a famous Chinese traveler, documented local legends of hidden libraries containing world-ending science. And then Al-Biruni, a highly respected Persian scholar in the 11th century, actually claimed to have met the distant descendants of this society in Kashmir.
No way.
He wrote that they completely baffled him with their advanced chemistry.
So you have Greek, Chinese, and Persian scholars, people from completely different cultures, separated by hundreds of years, all coming to India and describing the exact same secret society.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore. But this raises an important question, however, and as much as we love the mystery, we have to introduce some rigorous academic skepticism here.
Of course.
As compelling as these artifacts and journals are, there are massive historical red flags. First, the number 9. It is a suspiciously convenient storytelling device.
Because it's a magical number.
Right. Across global mythologies, from Norse to Egyptian, 9 is a deeply sacred, mystical number. It fits the pattern of ancient literary myth-making far better than a practical administrative reality.
And the biggest glaring hole for historians, Ashoka meticulously documented his entire life. The guy literally carved his regrets, his laws, and his philosophies into stone mountainsides for the entire world to read.
He wasn't exactly a private guy.
Not at all. Yet the phrase 9 unknown men is completely absent from his official rock inscriptions.
Given his tendency to document his initiatives so permanently and publicly that silence is deafening. Mainstream academic historians generally view the 9 unknown men as a symbolic elaboration.
So they think it's just a metaphor.
Mostly, yes. They argue that Ashoka's real documented concern for the responsible use of knowledge was simply mythologized over centuries, turning a philosophical stance into a literal secret society.
But despite that academic skepticism regarding the ancient world, we have to talk about the modern era. Because if that succession protocol actually worked, if the 9 passed their knowledge down generation by generation, this society would still be here right now.
Living among us.
And there are some incredibly bizarre documented encounters in the modern world that suggest they are.
The modern echoes are arguably the most thrilling part of this phenomenon because they bring the mystery right to our doorstep.
Definitely.
The most famous incident occurred in a dusty, unassuming Delhi library in 1952. A mainstream, highly credentialed physicist was approached by a seemingly ordinary elderly man.
Just some random guy.
Apparently.
Mm-hmm.
They struck up a casual conversation, But the elderly man proceeded to grab a notepad and explain the exact mechanics of nuclear fusion in such precise, whiteboard-level detail that it completely floored the physicist.
This was decades before mainstream science had reached anywhere near those conclusions.
Right. And then the old man just vanishes. He leaves behind no name, no contact info, just cryptic mathematical notes scribbled in ancient Brahmi script on a napkin.
That gives me chills, and that's not an isolated incident.
Not at all. In recent years, we've seen unexplained overnight leaps in open-source code repositories on the internet. Sophisticated paradigm-shifting algorithms just appearing anonymously from untraceable IP addresses.
And in the medical field, too, biotechnology firms working on genetics have reported receiving massive, encrypted data dumps precisely when they hit a research wall, accelerating their projects by years.
It's the exact modus operandi of the Nine, isn't it?
It really is, dropping targeted breadcrumbs of advanced knowledge to push humanity forward just a little bit, but maintaining total untraceable anonymity.
And it has caught the attention of people far above conspiracy internet forums.
Yeah, we're talking about governments. Declassified CIA documents from the 1960s show that American intelligence was actively investigating reports of a highly advanced classified scientific program operating independently in South Asia.
A file that was conveniently, abruptly shuttered and permanently classified.
British intelligence records from the Cold War also heavily reference the society in relation to unexplained backdoor technology transfers between nations, and it's widely reported that Indian intelligence agencies still maintain active physical surveillance on certain historical sites tied to the Mauryan Empire.
So, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the legend of Ashoka's Nine endures because his ancient dilemma is our exact modern dilemma.
So what does this all mean?
Just look at the headlines today. Artificial intelligence is evolving exponentially faster than our legal or moral frameworks can regulate it. Genetic engineering is capable of fundamentally altering the human species. Thousands of weapons of mass destruction are sitting in silos just waiting for a mistake.
We are absolutely terrified of our own knowledge.
Yes. We want to believe that someone is at the wheel. When we look at the chaos of modern technology, we desperately want to believe that somewhere out there, a wise, disciplined, morally incorruptible group of guardians is watching over us.
We want the Nine to be real. We want them keeping the guardrails intact so we don't drive civilization off a cliff.
Because the alternative, the reality that nobody's actually in control of this accelerating technological train and that we are just making it up as we go along is so much more frightening.
It's a terrifying thought.
Emperor Ashoka looked at the apocalyptic slaughter of Kalinga and decided humanity needed a chaperone. 2,000 years later, sitting here with our nukes and our AI, we are still hoping he was successful.
Which leaves you with a final, lingering thought to mull over today as you look at the world around you. If you were forced to select 9 people today, just 9 individuals on the entire planet, to hold the world's most dangerous knowledge and protect humanity from itself, who would you even trust?
That's an impossible question.
What criteria could possibly guarantee their morality? Or, in our hyper-connected digital age of constant surveillance, smartphones, and global hacking, is the modern world already too interconnected to ever keep a secret of that magnitude again?
Perhaps true secrecy, the kind Ashoka demanded, is the one piece of ancient technology we have actually lost forever.
If you decide to travel to India, we have a recommendation. Five Senses Tours organizes tours across India, which are immersive cultural experiences. You can email contact@fivesensestours.com. Note 5 is written as a numeral in contact@fivesensestours.com or WhatsApp to +919 845 677 446.